Right, marketing, sales, and service. It's time to get you the SlideDeck review for 19.2. So on Google Classroom, I've already provided that for 19.1. Here is 19.2 so that you have study materials for the quiz coming up tomorrow or Friday. So let's get into it. If we open up the SlideDeck, what we'll do before we get into 19.2 is get into the answers for the review key concept questions for 19.1, because I did not include those the first time because it was a premature exercise because we had just started that assignment. So here we go with the review key concept questions for 19.1. So the first question was, determine which form of advertising would most likely be used by a small company with a limited budget. And generally it's print advertising. So, and most specifically newspaper ads would be the best value for a small company with a limited budget. So through newspaper ads, the company can target local customers or those with interests that might connect them to the company. So the target comes from being able to put it in certain sections or choosing which newspaper to put it in. So it could be a large newspaper like the LA Times, or they could go super direct to one smaller town like outside of LA, like the town I grew up in, Idlewild. So the difference between newspaper ads and one of the main differences between newspaper ads and like a magazine ad in terms of cost is, black and white versus color, lead times. So magazines, they need weeks, sometimes months, just to put together a magazine. Newspaper, it's like overnight because they do it daily. So that's kind of some of the reasons why print advertisement in the form of newspaper ad would be most appropriate. Question number 2. Identify potential drawbacks with using the two types of broadcast media. So, just rearrange things here. So the answer for that was drawbacks for television advertising include there's a high production cost, and viewers often change stations or leave the room during commercials, or use devices that allow them to view commercial-free programming. So we're all streamers, I'm sure. And sometimes you have a premium account like with Hulu Premium where you don't have commercials, or YouTube Plus, or whatever the case may be. We've all found ways to avoid commercials, or most of us anyway, but so those are kind of the two drawbacks, is the high production cost and then just people being able to avoid the commercial programming. Drawbacks for radio advertising. Goods and services can only be described, so obviously for radio you can't see it, and radio ads have a short lifespan, so meaning they'll only last a day or a week, and they have to re-up and pay for those. So that's the answer to question number 2. Question number 3, connect the practice of media planning to the concept of market segmentation. So market segmentation is the process of classifying people who form a given market into even smaller groups. It's a part of media planning. So the demographics and lifestyles of the target audience must be considered during media planning. So demographics meaning age, male or female, lots of different things, zip code, and then lifestyles could be socioeconomic. So that's where you get into salary ranges and stuff. So that's target audiences being broken down into even smaller groups. Okay, so that would close out 19.1, and now going into 19.2, the shorter part of the chapter, but nonetheless important. So the prediction that they give us. And question, what financial and design factors do advertisers have to consider? Obviously a lot, because there's so many different types of advertisement that you can do. So the objectives: identify media measurement techniques, explain techniques used to evaluate media, summarize how media costs are determined, and then explain promotional budget methods. Okay, so the main idea: businesses need to reach as many targeted customers as possible. It is important to calculate costs and measure media effectiveness to reach a potential audience. So the vocabulary words were only 4, so audience, frequency, impression, and cost per thousand, CPM. And so here's a little graphic organizer that shows media measurement and rates for the different rates. So newspaper how they are determined, magazine, how are they determined, and so on. So you have newspaper, magazine, internet, and radio and television. So for newspaper, classified ad or display ad, the amount of space. So in a newspaper, if you have a full page ad, that's going to cost more money. Timing could be daily, could be weekly. Location of ad, is it like on the second page or on the very last page? Is it buried in the third section of the Sunday newspaper? So that will determine media rate. Magazine, what kind of circulation does that particular magazine have? Do people even read magazines anymore? Types of readership, so someone who's reading Reader's Digest might be a different type of consumer than someone who's reading Sports Illustrated. And then you got production techniques as far as how their magazine is distributed. Internet, so it could be display formatting, could be CPM rate based on views. So it's kind of Facebook's model on clicks and views, paid listings at portal sites, per click rates, pay for sale advertising. And then on the radio and television side, you've got network radio, national spot radio, or local radio. And then you've got time of day. So the same thing applies for television as well. Okay, so key terms in media measurement. So definition of audience, the number of homes or people exposed to an ad. Definition of frequency, the number of times an audience sees or hears an advertisement. Definition of impression, a single exposure to an advertising message. And lastly, cost per thousand, the media measurement cost of exposing 1,000 readers or viewers to an advertising impression. Okay, so the factors that affect newspaper advertising rates. Okay, open rate or non-contract rate, when advertisement appears. So do you want it to be on the Tuesday edition where there might not be as many readers, or do you want it to be on the Sunday edition? Location of the ad, again, so that could be in the back or on the front or somewhere in the middle, depends on what section you have it in. Color versus not color. And then again, frequency, so is it a daily paper, weekly paper? And so you would compare rates, cost per thousand, cost to reach 1,000 readers, cost of the ad times 1,000 divided by the circulation equals the CPM. So, magazine rates. You've got circulation, types of readership, production techniques, and frequency discounts, internet rates, banner ads, rich media ads, pop-up ads, we all know about those, pop-under ads, and paper sale. Radio rates and television rates, so you've got network ads, national spot radio, local radio, and time of day, which they already mentioned, and then on television, national, local, and the time of day. So if you've ever been up at 3 a.m., couldn't get to sleep, or just woke up and couldn't get back to sleep, and you're watching commercials on these crazy things at 3 a.m., there's a difference between the products that are advertised then versus, the prime time, between like 5 and 8 p.m. on any given day. Okay, acquiring recordings of radio advertisements for 4 radio airtimes. Let's see, no, that's not something we're going to do in class. Promotional budget methods, so you need to figure out the percentage of the sale, what you can afford, seeing what the competition is doing, and maybe keying off of what they do, or maybe even do the opposite depending on what your strategy is. And then the objective and the task, what are you trying to achieve with that promotion? Okay, so here are the review key concept questions for 19.2. Contrast possible ad rates for a small weekly newspaper with a large daily newspaper. So here is a rather complicated example that you could have talked about, and I believe this was in the text. With all things except circulation being equal, comparing rates using cost per thousand measurement. So that's the key thing, is the CPM. It would cost less to advertise in a large daily newspaper. Okay? So for example, cost of an ad for both papers equals $500. Circulation for a small weekly newspaper is 10,000 newspapers. Circulation for a large daily, 200,000. So here's the calculations. A small weekly newspaper, the $500 ad times 1,000, the CPM measurement, divided by the 10,000 papers of circulation, means that it costs $50 to get to 1,000 readers. on the large daily newspaper, that same $500 ad times the 1,000 CPM measurement divided by the 200,000 papers in circulation only costs you $2.50 to get to 1,000 readers. Okay, so number 2, the question was, explain how CPM determines the rates television and radio stations charge for advertising. So again, the CPM is the cost of exposing 1,000 viewers or listeners to an advertising impression. So for television and radio, as the number of viewers or listeners increases, the cost of the advertising increases. So the CPM increases as well. So in television and radio, just as each number gets larger, so does the other in terms of advertising. Number 3, suggest a reason that following the competition is not the best model for creating a promotional budget. So, one possible answer, not the answer, but one possible answer, the competition's goals may be very different than your goals. So following the competition's advertising will likely not help you reach your goals. So for instance, if you're a company whose reputation is about quality and your competition, their main focus is fast and cheap, you may not want to be advertising in the same ways that they are, because they're going for volume versus quality pieces. So let's say you're a furniture company and you're making wood tables, kitchen tables, and you're charging your customers $1,200 for a table because it takes you 10 days to make from quality wood that you get from Oregon. Now you could go to Walmart, where they have, large distribution channels, and they have tables and they're okay, and you probably get one for less than $100, but they're going to advertise way differently because of the quality and craftsmanship of said product. Okay, so that's 19.2. I'll post this to the Google Classroom so you have it available for study material, and we'll be having that quiz on chapter 19 in the next couple days. See you back in class.